comes a moment in every generation when God doesn't ask for volunteers. He awakens warriors. Not the kind dressed in armor or seated in thrones, but those hidden in plain sight. Mothers, intercessors, prophetic voices, kingdom builders, those who have been forged in the fire of silence, shaped in seasons of rejection, and refined in the shadows of obedience. These are the ones who don't need permission to rise because heaven has already commissioned them. And you, yes, you are one of them. The warfare surrounding your life is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of weight. You have been sensing it, haven't you? That the pressure, the opposition, the sudden attacks, they're not about what you've done. They're about who you are becoming. The enemy isn't after your past. He's terrified of your future. Because there's something inside of you that threatens the status quo. Something fierce, something prophetic, something royal, something bold. You don't just carry purpose, you carry presence. You don't just show up, you shift atmospheres. And like Deborah, you have been summoned for a time when others are shrinking, when fear is loud, and when leadership is rare. But heaven has declared, now is the time to rise. Because the warfare around you is proof of the boldness within you. Boldness is not simply a personality trait. It is not just confidence or assertiveness. It is the visible manifestation of a divine assignment pressing its way through a yielded vessel. When boldness rises in a person, it disrupts atmospheres, challenges systems, and awakens dormant realms. Deborah didn't just stand up in a time of war. She rose in a time when silence was considered safety. Her voice, her leadership, and her courage were not just expressions of faith. They were declarations of war in a territory where fear had made itself comfortable. There is a reason why warfare surrounds people who dare to stand boldly in the call of God. The spiritual realm is not neutral. It is fully alert to the presence of kingdom authority in human form. Deborah rose with the fire of conviction and the clarity of purpose. She didn't inherit a throne, she didn't seek a title, and yet heaven recognized her posture. And so did hell. When she stood under that palm tree judging Israel, she wasn't just offering counsel, she was laying down divine law. Her courage sent a vibration into the atmosphere that shook the strongholds of oppression and idolatry. Boldness awakens battle because it breaks the illusion of safety in compromise. When you rise up with the voice of righteousness, it disturbs every demonic agreement built on silence. The devil doesn't mind your prayers if they are powerless. He doesn't mind your presence if it's passive. But the moment you dare to speak, the moment you step into authority, the moment you stop shrinking and start commanding, something shifts. You have to understand that your boldness isn't random. It's not about you being extroverted or fearless. It's a response from heaven, implanted into your spirit. And when it's activated, it begins to confront the very spirits that were sent to suppress you. Deborah's time was not an era that favored women leaders. She had no political platform. She had no army. She had no public endorsement. What she had was a divine revelation of who she was and what God had placed inside her. That was enough to shift a nation. You may feel unqualified. You may feel hidden. You may not have the support or the resources. But if heaven has spoken over your life and boldness has been stirred in your soul, then know that you are not simply waking up to purpose. You are stepping into the battlefield of destiny. Spiritual warfare is a reaction to divine movement. When a believer becomes bold, demons lose the grip they had through fear and apathy. When Deborah opened her mouth and declared, "Up, For this is the day in which the Lord has delivered Sisera into your hand." She was not just encouraging Barak. She was announcing divine timing. Her voice carried timing, and her boldness aligned Israel with deliverance. This is why the warfare increases when you grow confident, because the devil knows your voice can unlock heaven's agenda and destroy demonic delay. Boldness is never without consequence. It costs you comfort. It costs you popularity. It costs you the illusion of peace. But it also gains you access to purpose, to destiny, and to spiritual legacy. The warfare is not a sign of your weakness. It is a signal of your emergence. Deborah didn't back down because of the tension around her. She understood that if the enemy was threatened, it meant the Lord was moving. Heaven responds to courage. The eyes of the Lord run to and fro, seeking hearts that are fully committed. Heaven doesn't respond to fear. Heaven responds to faith. And boldness is faith in motion. When Deborah arose, she didn't do it for herself. She arose as a mother in Israel. She arose for a generation. She carried a prophetic urgency that could no longer be hidden under insecurity or doubt. Likewise, you must realize that your courage carries consequences in the spirit. You are not made to sit back. You are not created to remain silent. You are being summoned to rise. The resistance you feel is confirmation. The spiritual backlash is validation. The warfare around you is not a punishment, it's a signal. Boldness is heaven's announcement that a new dimension of kingdom purpose has been released through your life. You're not being attacked because you're weak. You're being attacked because you've awakened. And your awakening is a threat to every system that benefits from your silence. The spirit of Deborah does not apologize for rising. It does not shrink back because of fear. It understands that every act of courage on earth is mirrored by divine movement in heaven. Deborah was not merely a warrior, she was a prophetic mother, a matriarch in a time of national dysfunction. Her presence did more than command an army, she awakened a people. The battles she fought were not simply for immediate relief or political freedom. They were about spiritual restoration and generational realignment. When she rose in obedience and divine boldness, she initiated a ripple effect that extended far beyond her lifetime. Her leadership restored order to a broken lineage and repositioned Israel to once again walk under divine covering. And this is the truth many overlook. When you rise in spiritual authority, you're not just fighting battles, you are shifting generations. You must understand that your warfare is generational because your impact is generational. The enemy doesn't waste his arsenal on people who are irrelevant to the future. The weight of what you're carrying is not for today alone. It has implications for children unborn, for systems yet to be formed, and for movements that haven't yet been named. Deborah didn't raise up one victory. She raised up a new standard. Her leadership model was not simply to command, it was to cultivate. She saw Israel as her offspring, and her voice was that of a mother calling her children back to covenant. There is a kind of spiritual authority that transcends titles and formal structures. It flows through people who understand that their obedience carries inheritance. When you obey the voice of God in the face of opposition, you are writing a new spiritual history for those who come after you. You're not just surviving storms, you're dismantling strongholds. You're not just enduring trials, you are breaking cycles. The pressure you feel is proof that you are interrupting patterns that have existed for generations. The resistance is not always personal. Often it's ancestral. You are confronting what others in your bloodline were too weary, too wounded, or too afraid to face. Deborah stepped into a role no one assigned her to, but everyone needed her to fill. Her rise to leadership was not through human promotion, it was through divine positioning. And that's the call over your life. You may not have the background, the connections, or the expected credentials, but God has marked you to be a turning point in your generation. You are not here to repeat what has been. You are here to establish what should be. Every time you speak with truth, live with integrity, walk in righteousness, and break compromise, you are becoming a bridge between what was and what must now be. This is why the warfare intensifies. Because you're not just a person, you're a doorway. You're a passage through which healing, deliverance, and order re-enter a family, a community, a nation. The spiritual resistance around you is because your life is confronting ancient altars, generational bondage, and silent agreements made in times of ignorance. You are a holy disruption. You are a divine interruption, and your obedience is shaking foundations built on rebellion and complacency. Deborah's story reveals something powerful, that spiritual motherhood or fatherhood is not about age, it's about authority. She didn't just fight the enemy with strategy, she nurtured a nation with wisdom. She didn't dominate with control, she governed with clarity. That is what happens when you carry generational influence. You don't just respond to crisis, you restructure culture. You don't just offer relief, you raise standards. You don't merely inspire people, you align them with God's timing. When you understand this, you begin to see your own struggles differently. What you're fighting isn't just about your current season. It's about what will exist because you didn't quit. The deliverance of your children, the restoration of your bloodline, the revival in your city, these things are connected to your yes. God entrusted you with this battle because He designed you to be a reformer. The warfare is real, but the assignment is greater. You may have been overlooked by man, but you are not hidden from heaven. The anointing on your life is not just for your survival, it's for generational transformation. And that's why the enemy fights you with such intensity, because every time you rise, something shifts in the spirit. Old orders collapse, chains break, identities are restored, and a new blueprint for the future is released. The enemy does not fear your current condition. He fears your coming transformation. He's not intimidated by where you started. He's terrified by where you're headed. The pressure that surrounds you right now is not punishment for your past, but warfare against your future. The battles you face are not random or meaningless. They are strategic assaults meant to stop the unveiling of what God is maturing within you. You are in the middle of a divine becoming, and the enemy is trying everything possible to abort the process before you manifest the power of your purpose. Deborah didn't rise as a threat overnight. She grew into it. Her authority was not always visible, but it was always real. As she sat under the palm tree, listening, discerning, judging with wisdom, her influence was taking root. She wasn't crowned by men, but she was commissioned by God. And while others saw a woman sitting in stillness, the enemy saw a storm being formed in silence. Her discernment, her clarity, her ability to hear and speak with divine accuracy. These things were not cultivated in comfort, but in quiet, consistent obedience. And that is what's happening in you. The spiritual attacks, the misunderstandings, the isolation, the inner turmoil, they are all signs of a spiritual pregnancy. You are carrying something too powerful to be born casually. That's why the enemy has released unusual pressure, not because of who you've been, but because of who you are becoming. You are evolving into a dangerous weapon in the hands of God, a strategic solution in the earth, and a voice that will not be silenced. Hell can see what heaven is about to reveal, and that's why your life has become a battleground. You may have been underestimated by others. People may see your failures, your flaws, your limitations, but the enemy sees your trajectory. He knows that if you keep walking, keep surrendering, keep pressing in, you will become an unstoppable force of kingdom authority. He remembers the last time someone with less than you shook the kingdom of darkness. And now he sees you rising, not with titles or applause, but with oil, with focus, with fire, with a made-up mind, and that terrifies him. Heaven does not release weapons without resistance. Every person used mightily by God went through seasons where the warfare intensified right before the release. You're not being attacked because you're weak. You're being attacked because you're armed. God is sharpening you, shaping you, stretching you into something the enemy cannot stop. And Satan knows that if he cannot destroy you, his next strategy is to distract you, to wear you out, to make you question your identity, delay your obedience, and shrink your boldness. But here's the truth. You are not who you were last year, last month, or even last week. Every storm has refined you. Every betrayal has purified your motives. Every delay has deepened your trust. You are not being broken, you are being built. What felt like loss was construction. What looked like setback was setup. What seemed like silence was strategy. God is not just developing your gift, He is developing your identity, your resilience, your vision, your voice. And when He unveils you, it will not be for applause. It will be for assignment. Deborah's emergence as a leader was not accidental, it was prophetic, and so is yours. She didn't ask for the warfare, but she didn't run from it either. Because she understood that leadership was not about status, it was about stewardship. She stewarded her influence, her voice, her discernment with the awareness that she was shaping the direction of a nation. You may not see yourself as a national voice, but you are shaping something just as critical. Your family, your environment, your generation, your becoming matters. The enemy fears who you're becoming because you're getting clearer. You're not just reacting, you're discerning. You're not just surviving, you're strategizing. And with every act of obedience, you step deeper into alignment with divine timing. The warfare you're facing is not about trying to destroy who you are, it's about preventing who you're destined to be. You're not just another believer, you're a key to a divine agenda. And hell fights what it cannot control. Divine boldness is never a solitary force. It may begin in one person, but it awakens others. It provokes what has been dormant. It shakes what has been settled. Deborah's rise to leadership didn't just make her visible, it made others accountable. When she opened her mouth and declared God's word with clarity and courage, something shifted not only in the spirit, but in the hearts of those around her. Barak was a seasoned military leader, but it was Deborah's boldness that activated his courage. Her divine confidence stirred his delayed destiny into motion. This is what boldness does. It summons the hidden warriors, the sleeping leaders, the buried assignments, and brings them to the surface. In the natural, Deborah and Barak made an unlikely pair. One was a prophetess sitting under a palm tree, the other a commander trained for war. Yet divine boldness makes room for alliances that logic cannot explain. God uses bold vessels to connect realms, to bring together wisdom and warfare, strategy and spirit, anointing and action. Deborah's courage was not confrontational for the sake of conflict. It was catalytic for the sake of destiny. She was not competing with Barak, she was complementing him. And through her divine alignment, God moved Israel into prophetic timing. When you carry boldness, you carry the authority to activate others. There are people whose destinies are waiting on your obedience. There are callings on pause because your voice hasn't spoken yet. There are battles not yet won because your presence hasn't stepped into the room. Deborah didn't wait for permission, she responded to the call. And when she did, the nation found its footing again. That's what happens when boldness is divine. It doesn't manipulate, it mobilizes. It doesn't seek to dominate, it empowers. Your presence becomes a spark, a matchstick that lights fires in people who have been hiding behind fear, delay, or confusion. Boldness is not volume, it is clarity. It is the voice of heaven echoed through human vessels. It is the Spirit of God saying, "Now is the time," and the vessel saying it without apology. Deborah carried this clarity. She looked Barak in the eye and spoke what God had already ordained. She called him into position, not through manipulation, but through divine insight. She wasn't insecure about his power, and he wasn't intimidated by her wisdom. That is the beauty of divine alignment. When each person honors the other's anointing, not from competition, but from covenant. Your boldness will attract the right alliances. You don't need to beg for support or force connection. When you rise with the authority of God, the right people will recognize the sound. Your boldness becomes a trumpet in the Spirit, calling forth reinforcements. You shift atmospheres, not because you demand it, but because heaven has marked your voice to carry the sound of movement. People sense when something is different. They recognize when your words are not rooted in ego, but in eternity. And those who have been assigned to run with you will respond. There are some alliances in your life that won't be formed until you rise. Some leaders won't find their rhythm until you speak. Some victories will remain delayed until you obey. Deborah's story reminds us that leadership is not always about being the strongest, it's about being the clearest. She didn't have an army, but she had a word. She didn't have a sword, but she had divine insight, and her boldness aligned heaven's timing with earth's readiness. And Deborah's sin is so important that it has a lifetime. Do not underestimate the impact of your presence. Your confidence in God is contagious. Your posture of faith summons others to rise. When you speak, it breaks apathy. When you act, it dismantles delay. You are not just stepping into your own assignment, you are unlocking the momentum of others. Barak's victory was connected to Deborah's boldness. Likewise, there are people around you whose destinies are intertwined with your obedience. When you carry divine boldness, you don't just win battles, you awaken armies. Deborah never led from a throne or marched with a battalion. She sat beneath a palm tree, open to the sky, rooted in the soil, carrying heaven's authority in her spirit and divine wisdom on her lips. She was not crowned by men, but she was anointed by God. And her greatest weapon wasn't a sword, it was her voice. Her voice judged rightly, commanded battles, aligned leaders, and summoned nations into divine timing. It was her voice that carried the sound of deliverance in a time of oppression. And that is why your voice has been under relentless attack, because hell fears the sound of deliverance in your mouth. The enemy's warfare against your voice did not start when you began to speak, it started when you were born. Because from the beginning there has been a prophetic sound inside of you. The enemy discerned early that your voice would become a weapon of mass disruption to his dark agenda. He has tried to silence you through rejection, through misunderstanding, through delay, through trauma, and even through people you trusted. But none of those things were truly about you. They were about the authority your voice would carry once you awaken to who you are. When God gives a person a voice, He gives them influence. Influence is not about popularity, it's about divine impact. And your voice carries that impact. When you speak with heaven's authority, things shift. Depression lifts. Fear retreats. Clarity returns. Strongholds crumble. The oppressed receive hope again. The lost begin to listen. That is why the enemy is so aggressive with those who carry prophetic clarity. Because when you speak, you tear through confusion. When you speak, you expose lies. When you speak, you build faith in others who are ready to quit. And that level of influence in the spirit threatens the structures of darkness. Deborah's voice wasn't loud, it was clear. She didn't speak often, but when she did, the land listened. Her words weren't rooted in opinion, but in revelation. Her discernment wasn't shallow, it was anchored in relationship with God. She didn't repeat what everyone else said, she spoke what God was saying. And that's exactly the call on your life. You weren't created to echo noise. You were created to carry a sound from heaven, a sound that awakens sleeping potential, a sound that cancels demonic delay, a sound that declares this is the moment and God is moving now. The palm tree under which Deborah judged wasn't just a place of rest. It was a place of rulership. She didn't need a building or a pulpit. She had a voice and a word, and that was enough to lead a nation. Let this be a revelation for you. Your voice is your pulpit. Your assignment is not bound by stage or spotlight. When you speak in your home, in your workplace, in your circle, deliverance happens. Your sound carries breakthrough. You don't need man's platform when you have God's permission. And so, the attack on your voice is proof of its power. Every time you've felt overlooked, disrespected, silenced, or ignored, it was the enemy trying to convince you that your voice doesn't matter. But let me remind you, voices that carry deliverance are always resisted first. They are tested before they are trusted. Before God allows your voice to echo in rooms of authority, He allows it to be forged in secret. Before it shapes others, it must survive the fire. That's why your battles have been personal. That's why your silence has often felt suffocating. Because your voice is not just speech, it's spiritual artillery. You may have been mocked. You may have been told you're too much, too passionate, too bold. But that's because your voice carries a frequency that makes demons uncomfortable. You were not meant to speak soft lies. You were designed to release hard truths. And yes, it has cost you. But what you carry is priceless. Every tear, every betrayal, every shutdown, every shut door, it was not the end. It was resistance to sharpen your resolve. Deborah never raised a sword, but her words defeated armies. And the same anointing is resting on you. The boldness of your voice will build nations. The truth in your mouth will restore families. The fire in your tone will ignite generations. Don't underestimate what you carry. Speak, even if your voice trembles. Speak, even if you're not yet heard. Speak, because when you do, heaven moves and hell shakes. Apostolic authority is not about titles, robes, or recognition. It is about divine assignment wrapped in humility and hidden in obedience. Deborah never wore a uniform. She never sat in a palace. She didn't command chariots or sit in a general's tent. Yet, when she spoke, heaven moved and nations obeyed. That is the mark of true apostolic power. When someone who carries no worldly title can shift spiritual atmospheres and mobilize divine action simply by walking in alignment with God's voice. You may not have been given a platform by people, but that does not disqualify the authority placed on you by heaven. The authority you carry is not man-made, it is God-breathed. And what heaven gives, no human can take away. You don't need the validation of crowds to move in kingdom power. You don't need credentials to walk in spiritual command. You don't need permission to release what God has deposited in you. Deborah is proof that when God appoints you, it doesn't matter who attempts to ignore you. Her authority came not from position, but from function. She did not wait to be accepted. She accepted the weight of her call. and walked in it faithfully. Many people are waiting to be seen before they lead. But apostolic authority doesn't start with visibility, it starts with vision. It is birthed in intimacy with God and tested in private obedience. Deborah judged under a tree, away from the noise, yet every tribe in Israel knew where to find her. When true authority rests upon you, people will seek you, even if they don't understand you. When you walk in divine function, favor finds you. And when you speak from the throne room of God, titles become irrelevant. Your influence flows from the oil on your life, not the label on your resume. Hidden leaders are some of the most dangerous threats to the enemy's agenda. They are not distracted by applause. They are not motivated by fame. They have been crushed in the secret place, refined by trials, and appointed by the Spirit. This is why you've experienced such intense warfare. The enemy sees your authority even before the crowd does. He senses the oil. He discerns the weight of your voice. He recognizes that you've been trusted with revelation. And he knows that if you ever fully step into what's been placed inside you, entire systems of bondage will collapse. You are not ordinary. And the war around you confirms it. The attacks on your character, your confidence, your clarity, these are not signs of failure, but of function. You are being resisted because you are rising. You are being opposed because you carry keys. You're not just a person, you're a solution. You're a voice that breaks generational delay. You're a vessel that houses kingdom blueprints. You are God's strategy in human form. And that kind of authority will always be challenged before it is celebrated. Deborah never asked to be honored. She simply obeyed. And in her obedience, God caused the leaders of the land to listen. Her lack of title did not limit her influence, because heaven backed her voice, and heaven backs obedience. That same backing is on you. You may feel hidden right now, misunderstood, even isolated, but that is often how God protects those He is preparing. Don't mistake obscurity for irrelevance. God hides what He values. He conceals His greatest weapons until the time of war. And if you feel surrounded, it may be because the time for your unveiling is near. Apostolic leaders don't need permission to lead. They are led by purpose. You're not here to blend in. You're here to build, to challenge, to shift. You carry governmental authority in the Spirit, whether or not man has acknowledged it. And when you begin to operate from that revelation, things around you will begin to realign. People will see you differently. Doors will open without you knocking. Resources will come looking for you. Because apostolic function attracts divine supply. You don't chase influence. Your obedience draws it in. So stand firm. Don't shrink. Don't wait for applause. Don't delay your voice waiting for approval. The mantle on your life was placed by heaven, and it cannot be revoked by man. Walk with confidence, not in yourself, but in the one who called you. Speak with clarity, not because you seek attention, but because your words carry weight. Move with precision, not because you have the map, but because you trust the one who orders your steps. You are not just anointed, you are authorized. And that authorization does not come from a platform. It flows from the presence of God. You were never meant to blend into the background of history. You were born to shift it. The warfare around your life is not accidental. It is evidence of a divine calling that carries weight in the Spirit. Like Deborah, you carry the kind of boldness that stirs sleeping warriors, realigns divine timing, and breaks generational silence. Your voice is not noise. It is a weapon. Your authority is not borrowed. It is built in secret with God. You are not waiting for permission. Heaven has already given you the assignment. You are rising in hidden strength, clothed in apostolic authority, shaped by adversity and called to lead in ways this world may not yet recognize. But make no mistake, hell knows your name, heaven backs your steps, and destiny is waiting for your obedience. So stand firm, speak boldly, move prophetically, because you are not just in a battle, you are the shift. The warfare confirms it, the boldness demands it, and the mantle on your life will not be wasted. You are chosen, you are dangerous, you are Deborah rising.